Thanks to the 400 people that DM'd me on Instagram this morning, I am now aware that Ivan Perišić has been spotted playing in what looks to be the unreleased Nike Mercurial Superfly 8. So what I want to do in this video is take a closer look at all of the details on these boots and effectively speculate on what might change from the current Superfly 7, basically covering the who, what, when, where, and why of the upcoming Superfly 8. I don't do a ton of boot spotting on this channel, but if you guys enjoyed this video and would like to see more videos like this, don't forget to support this one with a like. And if you are new here watching for the first time and don't want to miss out on weekly content on everything football boots, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So I guess I'll start by answering the number one question that I've been getting, and that is, when is the new Superfly 8 actually going to come out? If you're on the market for some new Mercurials, should you buy the Superfly 7 now, or should you wait a month or two for the Superfly 8? Well, unfortunately, we don't know exactly when these are going to come out, and given that Nike seems to have broken their usual 2-year life cycle for all their football boot lines that they had been doing basically since the early 2000s, it's entirely possible that these could come out next week and nobody knows about it and Nike's trying to surprise everybody. I highly doubt that, however. If I had to guess, I think that Superfly 8 will probably come out in early 2021. January probably, I think, makes the most sense. But that's just a guess. I don't see these boots coming out in 2020, but I could be totally wrong. And given that this is really the first time that we're spotting anybody playing in a prototype Superfly 8, leads me to believe that we're still a ways out. The second thing that a lot of people are asking about is in regards to the upper. Specifically, what is it made out of? Now, of course, the boots are blacked out in such a way to where it's supposed to hide a lot of the details, and I'm sure being a Nike Mercurial, it's going to have some fancy colors and some fancy graphics and probably certain things to show off the design of the boots that are currently being hidden. And at a quick glance, the boots look like they're knitted as the Superfly has been since the Superfly 4, but if you look a little bit more closely, specifically through the midfoot, you're going to notice these distinct little holes in white, and it kind of looks like flywire lines, but when you zoom in a little bit closer, it's pretty clearly holes. And the reason why those are holes and not white accents is because he's pretty clearly wearing white socks, and those white socks are showing through these holes in the blacked out upper. And this is a particularly important detail because if you remember back to the Nike Innovation Summit in early 2020, before all of this COVID chaos happened, Nike showed off the Air Zoom Mercurial, which we still don't know if that's going to release. I'm assuming, again, the COVID situation threw off all of their plans for mid to late 2020, but we'll see what happens with that. But that boot featured an upper with very similar looking see-through holes in what was a semi-translucent upper. With that upper not being Flyknit, but something new from Nike called Fly Print, basically a 3D printed textile that we don't really know much about at this point because it's never been featured on a football boot. But if I had to guess what's being featured on this new Superfly 8, it's Fly Print and not Flyknit. And unlike Flyknit, which offers more of a sock-like sensation in terms of its overall texture and feel on feet, Fly Print appears to be trending more towards a thin synthetic material, which is Nike kind of reverting back to what the Mercurial series used to be in the Teijin synthetic days before everything turned into a sock boot, which is very, very interesting. Also, given the fact this does appear to be a semi-translucent upper, if we're expecting anything like that Air Zoom Mercurial that they showed off. And unfortunately, while the Air Zoom Mercurial was technically unveiled before the Adidas X Ghosted series, both the Plus and the 0.1, if this boot does come out and it is semi-translucent, Nike is going to get called out for copying Adidas, but nonetheless, I think it's exciting to see that there is an upcoming Mercurial that isn't just going to be another remix of Flyknit, which is very risky because while it is always exciting for Nike to put out new technologies, and I'm sure the marketing to back this new technology will definitely get people excited, the Flyknit upper that they currently have on the Mercurial Superfly and Vapor is the best knitted upper we've ever seen on a pair of football boots. The fit, feel, and performance characteristics are phenomenal. So to follow this up with something completely different, we can only hope that it's half as good. And I think that the main focus here will be more so on the feel, the look, and possibly reducing the weight rather than more of a sock-like sensation, which is kind of the direction that the Superfly has gone in since the Superfly 4, which was obviously extremely popular. So as I've said on this channel, I don't know how many times times now, don't fix what's not broken. It does appear that they are going to fix what is not broken in the Superfly 7, and we can only hope that it's as good as these boots are. And just one more quick comment on the upper. Based on these pictures, at certain angles, it appears to have the vertical ribbed texturing somewhat similar to the Superfly 5, but a lot finer, just less significant, almost to the point where you had the texture from the Flywire cables on the Superfly 1, 2, and 3, which is pretty interesting. But then at other angles, it almost looks like it's somewhat of a grid pattern, which again, kind of relates it back to that Air Zoom Mercurial fly print upper. So we don't really know if this is going to be smooth or textured. At the very least, I think there will probably be a small amount of texture, and it'll probably feel a lot different than the current Superfly. Something else I'm sure you'll all have noticed is, of course, the fact that this new Superfly 8 is still a mid-cut football boot with a dynamic fit collar. That does appear to be Flyknit, despite the rest of the upper looking to be something else entirely. That Flyknit also seems to extend across the top of the foot, similar to the current Superfly design, which isn't that surprising. You will notice that the collar does appear to be cut more straight across and seems to be a little bit higher this time around, because really, since the Superfly 4, the collar has gotten lower and lower, so it looks like it's going back up again, which is great news. It means that the boot will have more ankle support. Can't say that with a straight face. Since 2014, I think the expectation has been that the Superfly will be a mid-cut football boot, so assuming that they're going to maintain with the whole Vapor and Superfly thing, the Superfly will have a collar, and whether or not we'll see Nike do something entirely different with the Vapor in terms of upper construction, or just make it the same boot without the collar, that remains to be seen. But if you like the collar on the Superfly, it's still going to be there on the next one. Also, for those that will ask about ACC technology, it's not super clear when you first look at the pictures, but if you zoom in a lot, you can very clearly see the ACC technology. As for the sole plate and stud patterns, while we don't have the clearest images of this as of yet, there are a few details that you can pretty clearly make out. The first of which is that this boot definitely still features a split sole construction that at the very least appears to be similar to the current generation of Mercurial, which is interesting to note because, again, that Air Zoom Mercurial concept boot that was eventually going to come out, but we haven't heard from Nike about in several months now, did not feature a split sole construction because of the Air Zoom tech that was supposed to be one of the main highlight features of that boot that Nike touted as a game changer. Is it possible that some of that Zoom Air tech will make its way into this next generation Mercurial with a split sole design? That is entirely possible, but if it's happening, we won't be able to see it because it would be inside of the football boot. Needless to say, it's not the same sole plate found on that Air Zoom Mercurial. And then as for the stud pattern, you'll immediately notice that it's distinctly different from what is currently found on the Mercurials and all Mercurials in the past that pretty much all featured bladed FG stud patterns. In place of that are conical studs with kind of an odd layout of 3 studs on either side through the heel. Very, very weird, but I don't think this is the FG stud pattern. And obviously everything that I'm talking about in this video is pure speculation at this point, but if I had to guess, this is probably the new AG stud pattern rather than the new FG stud pattern. And again, until we see more pros training in these prototype football boots that I'm assuming are not the final product just yet, we won't really know for sure. But given the fact that Nike's AG stud patterns always seem to have conical studs, even more studs, especially through the heel, this kind of reverting back to the AGR stud patterns that we had maybe in the 2014-15 era of Nike football boots. Since then, the AG Pro stud patterns have been a lot more normal in terms of their overall layout. And obviously, we're not going to see Neymar wearing Mercurials anymore, but he famously wore the AG Pro stud pattern rather than the FG one after suffering a couple of injuries. I can only assume they equated that to the stud pattern, or at the very least, he just preferred conical studs. I'm thinking that this is a similar situation where Perišić personally requested an AG variation of the boot with conical studs, or Nike just wants him to test them out, and he liked it enough to actually wear it in a match. We'll see what happens with this. Nonetheless, it does appear to be interesting, and it's cool to see Nike clearly experimenting with AG stud patterns rather than making them more of an afterthought, which is kind of what it seems like it has been over the last several years. And that is pretty much everything that we know so far about the next generation Mercurial Superfly 8. Hopefully you guys found this video helpful and enjoyable. If you did, be sure to support it with a like. If you have any questions regarding anything that I talked about in this video or the boots in general, feel free to to ask those questions down below in the comment section. I'll do my best to get an answer out to you. If you aren't subscribed to the channel already, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.